Hello everyone and welcome back to Pacific Rim Theory. Um this video was meant to come out on the day of the anniversary, but work got busy, so I was kind of sidetracked with that, but it's coming out anyway. We can still celebrate, right? We can still celebrate. I feel like after we hit the 10th anniversary mark last year, the next ones are just going to start feeling like a reality check because of how old I'm starting to feel, but nonetheless, here we are celebrating the 11th anniversary of this epic movie. So happy birthday, Pacific Rim. And today, in honor of such a special occasion, I thought it would be cool to cover a project that was originally part of Guillermo's plans for the franchise. As we all know, he wasn't able to make his version of the sequel, but another project was also scrapped when the reins were handed over to Stephen DeKnight, the director of Pacific Rim Uprising, and that was an animated TV show known as Pacific Rim Steel Warriors. So without further ado, let's dive in and find out what that project was all about. Steel Warriors was first announced via a video on Legendary Entertainment's YouTube channel, in which Guillermo del Toro announced that they were developing a new animated series for Pacific Rim, continuing the comic book series Tales from Year Zero, and making a sequel to the movie. Now from this, we can clearly see that Guillermo had plans to turn Pacific Rim into a franchise, in which we'd be getting multiple types of content from. And if I was even aware of this, or even online as much as I was in 2014, I know that this would get me so excited and beyond hype at the potential of seeing Pacific Rim become one of Hollywood's fixtures of blockbuster cinema. But luckily, after this announcement, fans did not have to wait long to hear more details about the animated series, as Guillermo had spoken about it in several different interviews. Speaking with the Wall Street Journal, Guillermo mentioned that they were currently looking for networks for Steel Warriors, and by the time Pacific Rim 2 would be out, they hoped that the series would also be on the air. He also gave a bit of insight into what the show would be focusing on, which was the Shatter Dome, the people that work there, the cadets, and the backstories of characters from the first film. This was further elaborated on when Guillermo spoke with Collider and mentioned that the show would have an overarching story that covered a group of characters like pilots, Jaegers, and new, younger characters. It would also further explore the concept of the drift, Jaeger tech, kaiju evolution, and the precursors. He goes on to state that the series would be 13 episodes long and would be a setup and a link between the first and second movie, and would target a young audience demographic, like 11-year-olds. If the show was successful, it would go on to have more seasons, but he was adamant on it not becoming a weekly episodic adventure. Guillermo also stated that he was specifically looking for Japanese animation companies and showrunners with a strong background in animation. But in the end, Steel Warriors was going to be made by Film Roman, an American animation studio that's known for providing animation for the Garfield primetime specials, producing season 4 and 7 of The Simpsons, working on X-Men Evolution, The Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Hellboy's Sword of Storms, and helping out with the VFX and Speed Racer. We also know via a tweet from Guillermo that he met with Maisie Williams, an actress most notable for playing Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, and voiced his interest in casting her in the Pacific Rim sequel. So she could have been a cadet in the animated show too, who knows? But the biggest news for Steel Warriors came in 2017, when Tommy Lee Edwards, the art director for the series, posted keyframes, character designs, and concept art that he made during the development of the show on his ArtStation. One of the artworks shows someone on a motorcycle looking up at a Jaeger in the background. Now, judging from the blue highlights in their hair, I want to say that this is Mako, but I'm not too sure on what Jaeger it is that she's looking at. But if you know, please mention it in the comments, and yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. We also get some character designs from two new characters called Pat Dixon and Arthur Windsor. Judging from Arthur's jacket, I think he might be a pilot or even a cadet. He does look a bit young, maybe early mid-20s maybe, but for Pat, I'm not too sure what their occupation would be. Their clothing doesn't really give an indication into their rank or position, so I'm gonna guess that they'd also be a cadet and maybe even a bit of an outcast. There's also a few storyboards of Raleigh and Mako fighting Leatherback, and Coyote Tango fighting a kaiju. And since Stack is dead and the fight with Leatherback happened in the first film, I think these sequences would have been a flashback, maybe a memory that Mako was reliving, which would have been cool to see from her perspective because the loss of her father would have definitely impacted her, and I don't think that was really explored much in the sequel. But speaking of sequels, the last news we'd receive about Still Warriors would come when the reins of Pacific Rim 2 were handed over to Stephen DeKnight, which is when the animated series was eventually cancelled. However, Guillermo did voice his hopes in still making the show, but confessed that it was ultimately out of his hands at that point. But as we all know, we did end up getting an animated Pacific Rim series called Pacific Rim The Black, which was nowhere near what Guillermo wanted for Still Warriors, aside from focusing on new characters. But who knows, maybe we will see it one day, though at this point it is wishful thinking, but I would love to think that Guillermo was still planning on making Still Warriors a reality, but again, like I said, who knows. And recently, my fellow Pacific Rim content creator, Pacific Rim Central, found artwork from one of the artists that were working on the show via their LinkedIn. They posted new pieces of concept art. I think one was a Jump Hawk, the aircraft that they use in the Shatter Domes, and another was a machine, I believe. I'll post it in this video, but I believe that's what it was. But you know, I mean, it's cool to see, and it shows how much work they did. But I want to see, I want to see the show. I just want more content, to be honest with you. It's wishful thinking, but I'm looking at, for example, the Alien franchise and the fact that that's getting a new film and a new TV show, and what Alien came out how long ago, you know. I still got hope, you know, even Ridley Scott's coming back to be a part of that project, so I'm still holding out hope that we might get something Pacific Rim related in the future. But yeah, happy birthday Pacific Rim, happy belated birthday I should say. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all again in the next one. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, thank you for your support, and have a good day.